What's up, truckers? Welcome back to Young Diesel Trucking Reacts. Before we get into today's video, make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring the bell, because what I'm about to tell you is something every single person in this industry needs to know about. So let me ask you something. When was the last time you heard the Department of Transportation drop an emergency rule that could literally reshape the entire trucking industry overnight? I'm talking about something so big that states are scrambling, drivers are panicking, and the whole system is being turned upside down. Well, that just happened. And if you're a CDL holder, if you're thinking about getting your CDL, or if you work anywhere in the trucking business, you need to pay attention to every single word I'm about to say. Secretary of Transportation Sean Duffy just made an announcement that sent shockwaves through our industry. We're talking about immediate restrictions on non-citizen commercial driver's licenses, a nationwide pause on issuing new ones, and federal funding being held hostage until states get their act together. But here's where it gets really interesting. They did a nationwide audit, and what they found is absolutely mind-blowing. California, the Golden State, the state with some of the strictest regulations you can imagine. Guess what? They're the worst offender. Over 25% of their non-domiciled CDLs were issued improperly. We're not talking about a few bad apples here. We're talking about thousands of licenses given to people who shouldn't have them. Some of these people aren't even legally authorized to work in the United States anymore. Let that sink in for a second. But it's not just California. Colorado, Pennsylvania, South Dakota, Texas, Washington, all of them got caught with their hands in the cookie jar. The USDOT isn't playing games anymore. They're threatening to cut federal funding, and we all know what that means. When the federal government starts pulling money, states start moving fast. Now, you might be wondering, why does this matter to me? I'm a legal citizen. I got my CDL the right way. I did everything by the book. Well, brother, this affects all of us, and I'm going to tell you exactly why. First off, let's talk about what a non-domiciled CDL actually is. This is a commercial driver's license issued to someone who doesn't permanently live in the state that issued it. Now, there are legitimate reasons for these licenses. Maybe you're a foreign national working for an international company. Maybe you're in a specific situation where this makes sense. But what the audit revealed is that the system has been abused on a massive scale. Here's what really gets me. These licenses were being handed out like candy, and a lot of them went to people who are no longer authorized to work here. Think about that. You've got someone behind the wheel of an 80,000-pound death machine, and they're not even supposed to be working in this country. How did we get here? How did this system fail so badly? The emergency rule that Secretary Duffy announced is targeting this exact problem. They're putting an immediate stop to new non-citizen CDL applications until states can prove they're following federal safety standards. Every single state has to pause and show they're in compliance. No compliance, no federal money. It's that simple. But let's dig deeper into why this is such a big deal for safety. I've been talking to truckers all over the country, and the stories I'm hearing are crazy. Language barriers are a huge issue. You've got drivers who can't communicate on the CB, can't read road signs properly, can't understand dispatchers. That's not just inconvenient, that's dangerous. When you're merging onto a highway or navigating through a construction zone, communication can be the difference between getting home safe and a catastrophic accident. And then there's the fraud. Man, the fraud. Falsified DOT numbers, fake logs, drivers who don't understand the regulations because they were never properly trained. We're talking about people who somehow got through the system without actually knowing how to do this job safely. That puts every single one of us at risk. You know what really bothers me? The honest truckers, the ones who did everything right, are the ones who suffer. We're out here competing with people who got their license through a broken system. We're held to a higher standard while others skate by. That's not fair. and is definitely not safe. Now, let me tell you about something that's been eating at me. The FMCSA's data queue system. If you don't know what data queue is, it's the system that tracks your driving record and accident fault. Sounds pretty important, right? Well, it's broken. Badly broken. I heard from a trucker recently who shared his story, and honestly, it made my blood boil. This guy was involved in 2 accidents. Not his fault. He had police reports proving it wasn't his fault. Clear as day. Black and white. The cop said he didn't do anything wrong. So he goes through the data queue process to get these accidents marked as not preventable. That's what you're supposed to do, right? You appeal, you show your evidence, and the system corrects your record. Guess what happened? The system failed him. Despite having official police reports, despite having proof, the FMCSA wouldn't mark those accidents as not preventable. Do you understand what that means for a driver? Your safety score takes a hit. Companies see those accidents on your record. They don't care that you have proof it wasn't your fault. They just see the numbers. Your insurance goes up, your job opportunities dry up, your reputation gets trashed. This is the same agency that's supposed to protect us and ensure fairness in the industry. Instead, they're running a system that punishes innocent drivers because their appeals process is a joke. How many careers have been damaged because of this? How many good drivers are sitting at home right now, unable to find work because the data queue system failed them? And here's the kicker. While the USDOT is cracking down on improper CDL issuance, which is great, they're not fixing the systems that are already broken. They're not addressing the fact that good drivers can't get fair treatment when they need to appeal an accident. They're not fixing the data integrity issues that are ruining people's livelihoods. Let me paint you a picture of what this looks like in the real world. You're a professional driver. You've been doing this for 10, 15, 20 years. You've got a clean record. You're proud of your career. Then one day, someone rear-ends you at a red light. Completely their fault. The police show up, write a report, cite the other driver, open and shut case. But that accident still goes on your record. So you file a data queue appeal. You submit the police report. You submit photos. You submit witness statements. You do everything right. Months go by. You finally hear back. Denied. The accident stays on your record as preventable. Why? Who knows? The system doesn't give you real answers. It just says no. Now you're trying to explain to every company you apply to why you have an accident on your record. They don't want to hear your story. They just see a driver with an accident. Next applicant, please. That's what's happening to drivers all over this country. And while the USDOT is busy cleaning up the CDL issuance mess, which again, I'm glad they're doing, they're ignoring this massive problem that's destroying careers right now. Let's get back to the state compliance issue. California issuing 25% of their non-domiciled CDLs improperly is absolutely insane. That's not a little mistake. That's systemic failure. But you know what's scary? California probably isn't alone in having these kinds of numbers. They just got caught first. How many other states are going to get exposed when the federal government really starts digging? And think about the trucking companies in all of this. They hired drivers thinking they had legitimate CDLs. They put them behind the wheel. They trusted the system. Now they're finding out that some of their drivers shouldn't have had licenses in the first place. What does that mean for their insurance, their liability, their safety ratings? Man, this is a nightmare for fleet managers. The competitive aspect of this can't be ignored either. If you're running a legitimate operation, paying for proper training, making sure all your drivers are fully qualified and legal, you're at a disadvantage compared to companies that were cutting corners. They were able to hire cheaper labor because they weren't as concerned about the legitimacy of the licenses. Now the playing field might finally get leveled, but the damage has already been done. Here's what I think is going to happen. States are going to panic. They're going to overcorrect. They're going to make the CDL process even more difficult for everyone, including people who should have no problem getting licensed. The federal government is going to come down hard with new regulations. Compliance costs are going to skyrocket. And guess who's going to pay for all of it? Us, the drivers and the small trucking companies trying to stay afloat. The fraud angle is something we need to talk about more. Falsified DOT numbers aren't just paperwork violations, they're safety violations. When someone is operating under a fake DOT number, there's no accountability, no safety record, no way to track violations. They can cause an accident, abandon the fake number, and pop up somewhere else with a new one. That's terrifying. And the log falsification, that's how people end up dead. Hours of service regulations exist for a reason. When you got drivers running illegal logs, they're driving tired, driving distracted, driving dangerously. That semi-truck doesn't care if you're exhausted. Physics doesn't care if you faked your logbook. When you lose control, people die. I want to be clear about something. This isn't about being anti-immigrant or anti-foreign worker. This is about safety and following the law. There are plenty of non-citizen drivers who went through the proper channels, got their CDLs legitimately, and are fantastic professional drivers. They're not. The problem is a broken system that allowed unqualified people to get licenses they shouldn't have. The language barrier issue is real, and we need to talk about it honestly. If you can't understand basic English, you can't safely operate a commercial vehicle in the United States. That's not discrimination. That's common sense. You need to be able to read warning signs. You need to be able to communicate with other drivers. You need to be able to understand dispatchers and DOT officers. It's a safety requirement, plain and simple. Now, what does this mean for the future of trucking? Short term, we're going to see chaos. States scrambling to comply, drivers with questionable licenses getting pulled off the road, companies struggling to fill positions. But long term, this could actually be good for the industry. If it's done right, we could end up with a safer, more professional workforce. The key word there is if. If the USDOT actually follows through, if states don't find new loopholes, if the enforcement is consistent. That's a lot of ifs. What really needs to happen is comprehensive reform, not just CDL issuance, but the entire system. Fix the data queue process so innocent drivers can clear their names. Modernize the data system so they're accurate and responsive. Increase penalties for fraud so severely that nobody even thinks about faking a DOT number or falsifying logs. And most importantly, provide proper training and resources so that everyone who gets a CDL actually deserves one. The federal funding threat is the biggest stick the USDOT has. States rely on that money for infrastructure, enforcement, and programs. If the federal government starts cutting checks, governors are going to feel the heat immediately. That's probably the only reason this is going to work. Money talks, and the threat of losing millions, maybe billions, is going to force compliance faster than any regulation ever could. But here's my concern. What happens to the drivers who got their CDLs through this broken system but didn't know anything was wrong? They went to a state DMV, filled out the paperwork, took the tests, and got their license. They didn't commit fraud. They didn't lie. The state just issued them a license they shouldn't have. Are they going to lose their CDLs? Are they going to lose their jobs, their livelihoods? That's thousands of people who might be caught in the crossfire through no fault of their own. And what about the trucking companies that are already struggling to find drivers? The driver shortage is real. Now you're potentially taking thousands of drivers off the road. How is that going to affect freight movement, shipping costs, supply chains? We could be looking at another logistics crisis, and we just recovered from the last one. The timing of this is interesting too. Why now? Why did it take a nationwide audit to uncover something this big? These problems didn't start yesterday. This has been building for years. Was nobody paying attention, or was everyone just looking the other way because it was easier than dealing with the problem? I'll tell you what, I think this has been a known issue for a long time, and it took someone with the political will to actually do something about it. Secretary Duffy is making a statement. He's saying the old way of doing things is over. Whether you agree with his politics or not, you have to admit this is a bold move. The question is whether it's going to stick. How many times have we seen big announcements from Washington that fizzle out after the news cycle moves on? How many reforms have been promised that never actually happen? The trucking industry has been waiting for meaningful change for years. Is this it, or is this just another press conference? One thing's for sure. Every driver needs to make sure their documentation is in order. If there's any question about your CDL status, now is the time to get it sorted out. Don't wait for a DOT inspection to find out you have a problem. Be proactive. Contact your state DMV. Make sure everything is legitimate, because when the federal government starts cracking down, you don't want to be on the wrong side of it. For the trucking companies watching this, you need to audit your drivers now. Verify every CDL. Make sure you're not unknowingly employing someone with an improper license, because if the feds come knocking and find out you've got drivers who shouldn't be on the road, that's your liability. That's your company's reputation. That's potentially your business. The broader message here is that accountability is coming back to trucking. For too long, there's been too much fraud, too many shortcuts, and honestly, just too many people gaming the system. But that era is ending. The professional drivers who do things right, who take pride in their work, who follow the rules, they're finally going to be protected. The cowboys and the cheaters are going to be weeded out. But we can't forget about fixing the broken systems that hurt good drivers. The data queue process needs a complete overhaul. Drivers with legitimate proof that an accident wasn't their fault should have a clear, efficient path to get their records corrected. The fact that someone can have a police report and still get denied is unacceptable. That needs to be priority number one for the FMCSA. As we wrap this up, I want to hear from you. Have you had problems with the data queue system? Have you seen the effects of improper CDL issuance in your area? Are you worried about how these new regulations are going to affect your career? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's have a real conversation about this. Is a turning point for the trucking industry. What happens next is going to define how we operate for years to come. We need to stay informed, stay engaged, and hold these agencies accountable, because at the end of the day, we're the ones out here on the road. We're the ones whose lives depend on everyone being properly trained and licensed. We're the ones who have to live with the consequences of these policies. If you found this video helpful, smash that like button. Share it with every trucker you know. This affects all of us, and everyone needs to understand what's happening. Subscribe if you haven't already, because I'm going to be following this story closely and bringing you updates as they happen. Stay safe out there, drivers. Keep it between the lines. And remember, the road doesn't care about politics or policies. It only cares about whether you're ready for it. Make sure you are. I'll see you in the next